Welcome everybody to Creating Sanctuary, Leveraging Faith Community Land for Affordable Homes. This is one amazing event in a spectrum of 13 wonderful free virtual events in the 25th Annual Affordable Housing Week. I will give you links in the chat later for how to get connected with all those other events going on. Also want you to know that at EBHO, we have created this really exciting brand new portal called the Study Room. You can go there, click on different links to look at anything from how to end homelessness to creating power and to enacting solutions. It's very cool, and I encourage everybody to check it out after this panel. Also, we want to just have a chance here to introduce you to EBHO or East Bay Housing Organizations if you're not familiar with us. What we are all about is creating, preserving, and protecting and producing affordable housing for all. We really believe that we are stronger together when we are all housed and living in a sustainable, safe community. So we want you to join us in our membership-driven group where we come together to organize, build coalitions, educate, and advocate. So if you are not yet a member of EBHO, please join me and other people in this group in coming together to reach our vision. We need everybody to participate, and everybody has something to give, reaching our mission that everybody in the East Bay would be housed and have a safe and sustainable home. So please join us. You can reach out to our membership director, the awesome Kiki Poe. I'll also give you her contact information in the chat. I am Vanna Whitney. I am a principal at Letty Madam Stacy Architects. I'm a very proud EBHO member and a board member. So looking forward to the panel today and getting to know the rest of you. I'll pass it on to Sophia.
Thank you, Vanna, so much for those words. And I am Reverend Sophia DeWitt, Program Director here at EBHO. As we get started this evening and gather to celebrate affordable housing and to promote housing justice, we must also acknowledge Indigenous people as the stewards of the land on which we live and build. The East Bay is the unceded territory of the Lisjan Ohlone people. As we work against the displacement of the people in our community, we recognize and name the histories of displacement of the communities that existed here before us. We also uplift the work of our Ohlone neighbors to create spaces of belonging. EBHO is in the process of paying Shumi, a voluntary land tax that supports the work of the Sagorate Land Trust, which returns Ohlone land to Ohlone land stewardship. And we'll be engaging with our members and supporters later this year to encourage you all to do the same. We'll plug in some resource links for you in the chat. So stay tuned until later this year when we continue to talk about the land trust and Indigenous land stewardship. And now I want to turn it over to my colleague, Ronnie Boyd, our community faith and justice organizer at EBHO, to begin our panel discussion this evening. Ronnie.
All right, thank you, Sophia. So tonight we're gonna have a nice intimate conversation with 4 faith leaders in our area. And then we're going to, after the panel discussion, we're going to have a Q&A. So you'll have a chance to ask whatever burning questions you'll have. And then after that, we are going to get into call to action, so you can see how you can be involved wherever you are in the fight for affordable housing. So we're happy to have a diverse panel with us this evening. Each faith community represented here has been on a unique journey toward meeting the need for affordable housing in our community. And I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves, their faith community, and their affordable housing journey. And we are going to start with Reverend Ken Chambers.
Hello. I'm Ken Chambers, pastor of the Westside Missionary Baptist Church, also the president and founder of the Interfaith Council of Alameda County. Former work I've done with the Westside Economic Development Corporation, which in 1999, sounds like a long time ago, purchased the Acorn Shopping Center and flipped it and turned it to Jack London Gateway Center in conjunction with the Balsian Portfolio Properties. Brought in a grocery store 20 years ago, created 500 jobs into our community. Since 1999, we have had a roller coaster ride of economic suppressions and depressions that has caused our communities to have become gentrified, to rocketed. And so our mission has definitely had to change and evolve as a church and a congregation and an interfaith council. And development corporations, faith-based development corporations, in order to try our best to do a foot race to keep up with the growing trend of housing inequalities. Housing is a human right. It's not a privilege. We're mammals that have been made to live in shelters, some type of housing ever since the beginning of humanity, and to house our families, to take care of our families, feed our families, provide for our families. That's what life is all about. And whatever persuasion, faith, or tradition you come from, we all eat food, we all love to have shelter and want to be healthy, happy, and whole. And that comes with giving good education and housing into our communities. So in the next couple of minutes, I just want to say that Interfaith Council has started a homeless solution program 3 years ago, which was Safeguard Park program, which is housed at the Westside Missionary Baptist Church. Basically, people come in 7 p.m., leave out 7 a.m. when we wrap them around with a whole lot of services, give them shower access and laundry access every Wednesday from 4 to 8. In conjunction, we have quite a bit of property over the last 80 years of existence of the Westside Missionary Baptist Church, which is in my background, a prefab building, very economically built years ago, but serves the community not only as a church facility, but as a community center. And last little minute here is that part of the Interfaith Council work, which stretch across the 14 cities across Alameda County, we try to have a board that represents that geographical area, the diversity. And I'm very proud to say we're the newest Interfaith Council in the Bay Area, but has the most youngest board members in participation. We have millennials, half, the 1/3 to a half of our board basically is millennials. And we're very appreciative of that. Very diverse Abraham faiths and some non-traditional Abraham faith traditions. Our work is to look at a shelter wraparound day service, day center now, and then to take properties that spread it out through Alameda County and to build affordable housing for it. So that's my little introduction. Thank you all for inviting me, and I really look forward to this event. I want to give kudos to all the directors of EBHO, and especially to Ronnie, Boyd, and Sophia, with very close with, to the ED, the executive director. God bless you all for the work you're doing. Look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Ken. Next, we have Alice Clark.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you talking about this wonderful idea of building sanctuary, a very faith-based thought for faith-based communities to build sanctuary in the form of homes for people who have no homes. I have been involved in the First Congregational Church of Berkeley's Affordable Housing Committee for the last year, along with Sophia DeWitt, who is a member of our congregation. And my involvement with this church also goes back to concern about housing and diversity from several years earlier. The program that I'm going to talk to you about is coming from a very different angle than some of the ones that you'll otherwise hear about, because our program to build housing on a corner of our property is very much in the future. It's an idea and a plan and a vote by our congregation to build some housing, perhaps 40 units, on a corner of our property that is now part of our parking lot. But this idea is born out of two things: our vision for our congregation and its mission, and disaster. Our church, First Congregational Church of Berkeley, burned in 2016 so severely that we suffered a great loss, and the economic consequences of it have kept us from being able to get rid of the hulk of the old building and rebuild. All this time, there have been many, many steps in that process of just trying to get past the disaster of the fire. In the meantime, we started visioning about what was our role in the world, right alongside of having to be moved out of our congregation, out of our space to worship in a different congregational space, Temple Bethel, which was very kind to us to give us space to worship on Sundays when they worship on Saturdays. And we have continued to work with the visioning that we have for the work of our church in spite of this disaster. And we've learned a great deal from it. I think what I have to offer here is going to be sort of some steps that you can take to overcome all kinds of difficulties and move forward into the realm of the vision that your congregation may have for helping to solve homelessness in our region. So I think I'll stop there and tell you more about the story itself after we have a chance to ask some questions.
Okay, thank you, Alice. I appreciate that very much. Next, we have Billie Simmons.
Hi, good evening, and thank you so much to everyone, to Sophia, Ronnie, and especially I'd like to say hello to Gloria Bruce, the Executive Director for EBHO. Tonight, you're going to hear me talk, not only, I'm from Agnes Memorial Church of God in Christ. We're located in the heart of Oakland, California at 2372 International Boulevard. My husband is the pastor, Lambert Gregory Simmons, but it was founded by the late great Bishop Marshall Q.C. Simmons. And our assistant pastor is my daughter, Agnes Simmons. And we are blessed. My former and my late father-in-law was a visionary. He came into that space, which is a block of property. It is over 32,000 square feet of property, which was unheard of in the 1970s. And we have an additional over 10,000 square feet of property in a lot across the street. And it was unheard of, but he was a visionary. And the Lord has blessed us not only to take on feeding of the hungry, clothing of the naked, but also the mantle of trying to house those who are unhoused. And it was always the vision of my father-in-law to house his members as they age. He didn't understand the terminology of affordable housing. That was not in his wheelhouse. But again, I say he was a visionary. So in 2008, we were approached by a developer. And some of you out there are like us. You hear developer and you think maybe that's a scam. What is this, a developer? If you're like us, many of our members have sanctified and killed many of chicken dinners trying to pay the mortgage on your churches. And you don't understand, what does this mean, affordable housing? We don't even understand that terminology. But tonight, hopefully, we will break down the mystery of affordable housing, and that it is not a scam, that it is a way to turn this property that God has placed in our hands to be stewards over. And tonight, you're going to hear me talk about another tool or resource. You're going to hear the terminology LISC, Bay Area. And you're going to think I work for LISC when I talk about them so much tonight. And why I'm going to talk about them is because I completed a program that I wished I had known about at the beginning of my 13-year journey, at the beginning of this development journey. And you say 13 years and I haven't even broke ground. But let me tell you, we are a faith-based community and we walk by faith. And you have to believe that you have been called to develop your land. That is the first thing. You have to believe this. But also, you have to have the tools. Affordable housing has its own language. You have to understand what you're talking about. You have to understand the landscape. And so when I talk about LISC Bay Area, they have a new program that's about to take place. June 1st is the application deadline. So I want to intersperse that throughout my presentation tonight. So thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Billie. Excited to hear from you. Everybody else. Next, we have Reverend Phil Brochard.
Evening all. Good to see you, and thank you so much to EBHO and all the folks to invite me to be a part of this tonight. I am a priest at All Souls Episcopal Parish in Berkeley, just north of the Cal campus, and I definitely hear what Billie was preaching about in terms of how long this process can be. And for us, it maybe isn't as long as it is for others, but it has been a long road. And so, but what I can testify to tonight is that there can be an end of the road that ends up in housing. And so I'll be talking tonight about Jordan Court, which is, here's a picture. I went old school with my presentation here tonight. So Jordan Court is a 34-unit affordable housing for seniors project that is on our campus and involves the housing for seniors as well as some office space for All Souls and some housing for staff of the congregation. And so I'm just really glad to talk about it tonight because it's got a roof on it already. We're hoping that folks by the end of this calendar year will actually be able to move into it. And all the things that have been said so far, I resonate deeply with. I do believe that from the start, we have been really clear that what we're trying to do is take our part in a communal obligation that nobody should have to sleep outside. And so we want everybody to have a place to call a home, and not just in this project, we're not just trying to build housing, but we're trying to help build community. And that's something that folks in our neighborhood, I think, are looking for. And I think across the city and across the East Bay, I think people are hungry for it, not just housing, but community. And so when we looked at what to do with this part of land we had and how we were called to be stewards of it, there's a longer story there, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, but we saw that we had a role to play and we wanted to do our part. And so we're really excited to talk about it, and all the twists, or not all the twists and turns, we'll be here for a long time if I talk about all the twists and turns, but just a few of them, and how actually the city and the county, the state, and the federal government, as well as all our partners in the community, have got us to today. So glad to be here.
Thank you. Those were some fine introductions, and it's really great to hear the background about how you all got started with your affordable housing on your properties. So we're gonna delve into this a little bit more. We're gonna start us off with a question. Tell us about the journey of your faith community to use property for affordable housing. I'm going to repeat the question again. Tell us about the journey of your faith community to use property for affordable housing. And we can popcorn this. Whoever has the burning desire to go first.
Well, I'll jump right in there. It's great to work with such an awesome panel, and I support everything been said and admire the work of all that is going on. One thing that we tried to do immediately with our property is tiny homes. We did a partnership with Laney College, City of Oakland, and built 2 tiny homes at a very expensive cost of $80,000 at the first protocol, one with a kitchen, bathroom, the other is just a sleeping unit, but they were for students, and we brought in 3 students from Laney College, and we're very proud to say that the grade point average went up immediately of first quarter of staying there. They stayed 18 months, and they moved on to a BA program. And we got the pandemic happened, and school got delayed a little bit, but we have our 3rd student about to graduate the end of this month and go on to a BA program, which we have now hired working with the Interfaith Council. So that community piece that Pastor just talked about is so important. We've had a community, and then the congregation had to embrace this. This was new for us. But it worked out, and we're very glad we did it. It was some sleepless nights, but we made it through, and we're on our 2nd phase of tiny homes on an interim basis. So do what you can when you can with your property.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Chambers.
I can jump in here and tell you a little bit about the journey of our faith community towards building affordable housing. And I told you in the beginning that it was a combination of vision and disaster. We had a congregational visioning process that went on in early 2016, and then we had the fire that burned down our main office building, the sort of life hub of the church. We saved the sanctuary, but we still had to get rid of the old main building for the church, and it hasn't been gotten rid of yet because of many, many obstacles. The faith journey of our church is a congregational church with a congregational process. And so I would have to lift up the committees that have worked, bled, sweat, and tears for these 4 years, dealing with the financial issues, the struggle with the insurance, the struggle with where were we going to get the finances to actually rebuild? Well, the rebuilding has proved to be such that we cannot do what we had before. So we have designed and adopted a plan that is smaller for the rebuilding of our main church building. But it will have spaces, kind of community spaces around it. And then we also have this plan to build affordable housing on the corner of the property, partly in order to financially support our church. It had always been a possibility that we might do that, but it took a very complicated visioning process to adopt a resolution that part of our vision for ourselves as a church is to overcome homelessness in the East Bay. And so in order to serve that vision, we then looked at this process of tearing down and rebuilding our main church building and looked at the financial struggle that it was going to be, and said, let's combine these two things. Our vision to overcome homelessness in some way that we can, and the support of our continuing life as a church on this property. Perhaps I've said enough about that right now, so as to leave time for somebody else to enter the conversation here.
Thank you, Alice.
I'll jump in right now. I'll say my journey started in 2008. As I was stating earlier, I was approached by a developer, and the developer was related of California. And this was a well-known developer, but I didn't know at the time. So I just thought, well, I didn't pay it any attention. But the developer was was persistent. And so I did my homework. I looked it up to see what kind of projects they built. I found out that they had projects here in the Bay Area. They took me by to see what kind of quality of work they did. And I ran it by my father-in-law at the time, the bishop, and said, what do you think? Are you still interested? Because I didn't want to do anything out of order. So he gave us the green light, but still, I didn't know what it entailed about what is this development? What is it going to look like? What are you talking about? I didn't understand the language. What is this partnership? So now when you talk about a partnership, are our visions in alignment? Because we paid for this property. I came to this church as a 19-year-old girl. I was there when we burned the deed. I knew what it meant to our congregation. Are you meaning we're going to sign over our land? This was blood, sweat, and tears. Is this going to be a true partnership? So I know the fear when churches think about, what are you talking about when you talk about our property? This is like a marriage, right? So you have to trust your partner. So again, I'm talking about LISC here. Before you go ahead, I'm telling you, you need to think about this class, because I wish somebody had taken my hand. Because when you talk about joint venture partnership, I didn't know that terminology. I didn't know entitlement, right? I didn't know NOFA. I didn't know those acronyms. But darlings who are looking at me, who are thinking about it, this cohort conducted by LISC Bay Area that starts, these are the things. I needed a development consultant. I prayed about having somebody who was on my team, right? A development consultant who is on your side, right? Who walks with you and sits at these meetings with the developer on the other side and looks at this MOU. Somebody's looking at me and saying, what does that mean? What is a memorandum of understanding, right? So for these 13 years, even though I was in the middle of this last year of being a part of LISC's cohort, they had trained people in these workshops. I just received an entitlement within this last year. And you know why? Because the people and the expertise I received. And this is what I'm talking about. People like Gloria Bruce and the people at EBHO that sat down with me, who remembered me. She knew my heart. She knew that little Agnes was committed to wanting their land developed for people who were unhoused. And she remembered, oh, LISC has a program. Billie needs to be there. Developing housing is not a solo sport. It is a team sport. Let me tell you, can I say that again? If your dream can be done by yourself, then your dream is too small. It is too small. You need community. You need community players. I must say that again. So please forgive me if I keep on saying List Bay Area darlings. You need to be a part of this training because you don't want to sign on the dotted line and not know what you're signing away. It is too important. You are too important. Your land is too important. Your dream is too important. Housing is too important. And the people you want to take care of are too important. So my journey, even though it's been 13 years, I have my entitlements. Even though the city of Oakland has a NOFA coming out and they're saying there is no money in the piggy bank this time around, I am still committed because I have more tools in my tool belt because of the training I just received from the LIST training. Because knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And that is what EBHO is telling and doing by these, affordable housing workshops. They're giving us tools. They're giving us tools, that's all. And so that is what my journey has been. I'm still on it. I may have not broken ground, but I have plans. I know what my housing will look like. I have a vision, right? So that's where we are right now, 13 years later. I have an architect. I have entitlements, right? I have a development consultant on my team. My team is getting bigger, right? That's what it's about, right? So that's where we are right now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Billie.
But
Can
I
I
tell
say
you,
one
if we're
thing?
going to have to be on Zoom, I like that we get to be in church. Thank you, Billie. So let's see. Our process goes back, I think we're in our 7th year working with this. So I've got a picture here of what things used to look like. That's the apartment building that had been there on the corner of our property. It had cracks in the foundation. It was not in good shape when we got it. And it was clear to us that it was not going to be able to remain in that shape. And so we knew something had to happen. And we also knew that given the cost of things, that it was going to be hard for us to, as you said, Billie, we couldn't do this on our own. And so we looked at, what could we do with this? We had a year-long discernment process as a congregation and came out to 3 different possibilities. One of them was, could we do just a modest building just to take care of our own church's needs? Another was, well, what if we went with a for-profit developer? And what if they were to take this property and put some apartments on it, likely for students? Again, we're just a couple blocks away from the university. There's a huge need in Berkeley in general for housing for students. And then the third possibility was, could we do affordable housing and what would that look like? And so we reached out to a number of folks to help us with this because, as you said, we didn't know what we didn't know. We had to figure out how to make this decision. And it came really clear. This is, just about 6.5, 7 years ago. And even then, we were all feeling what the tide was rising of the housing crisis, and we could everybody was feeling it. And so when the for-profit developer, who I think there's some fine human beings, came to us and said, we'll be able to put up a new building, give you some space for the church, put in 2-bedroom apartments, and we'll be able to rent it out, no problem. We said, that sounds good. This is, now about 5.5, 6 years ago. And we said, how much are you going to rent those 2-bedroom apartments for? And he said, no problem, $4,000 a month. And that took us by surprise. And, they have a plan where they put bunk beds in the bedrooms and they get the students in there, and, it works out for them financially. But what we very, very quickly realized was we didn't want to be taking part in the same process that we were seeing that was just hugely traumatic for so many people across our region. So at that point, we reached out to low-income housing developer, and that turned out to be SAHA, Satellite Affordable Housing Associates. Just up the hill from us, one of the seminaries had attempted to do a big housing project, and it had met stiff local opposition, and that housing project went down in flames. And so our neighborhood was already rallied, but not in the direction we were hoping for. And so it was really clear to us that seminary happened to use a developer from Chicago who did not know Berkeley, did not know the East Bay, did not know California well. And so we really wanted to work with people who were local. And fortunately for us, Saha, here in Berkeley, born in Berkeley, been doing this work for a really long time. And so they met with us and they said, okay, this is how we think this could look. We think you could get so many units here. It quickly became clear it kind of was how we're going to orient the building. So one of the wings is for affordable housing. Another wing has like the community space and then space for All Souls on top of it. And so that was the beginning of the process. And I'd be glad, I know that Gloria Bruce earlier had a question about community opposition. I think we all have a story or two we could tell about that, so I'm glad to talk about that later. But for us, the project has been, well, I think one of the things I realized is you need to believe in it deeply and you need to hold it lightly. Because if you don't believe in it deeply, you're not going to make it. There are just so many things along the way that will seem insurmountable. And if you don't have the faith, it won't happen. But also I found that, especially you talked about sleepless nights, if I hold on to it too tightly on my own, I probably won't get very much sleep. And so I think we in faith communities have practices of doing this that have been handed down to us for generations. And so that's the kind of stuff we need to call on. I can talk more later about the design process if that's helpful, but what I will say is that getting into the community, and not just the community around our church and our immediate neighborhood, but reaching out to our interfaith partners across the city, and also being in close conversation with our city council members, our mayor, our county supervisor, all those folks were instrumental in getting stage to stage to stage.
Thank you, Phil. Yes. Sophia says, believe in it deeply and hold it lightly. Yes.
Can I respond to three things real quick?
Yes.
Say, this is such an awesome panel. Also, church, while working on their affordable housing, seeded the Interfaith Council of Alameda County with resources 3 years ago. I've been at the table with the Interfaith Council, but yet got their own housing project now. It's community. Alice Clark at First Presbyterian Church, in the midst of going through a fire and all the challenges of housing in Berkeley, had time to bring the People's Campaign together here in the Bay Area to launch with Reverend Barber at their site in San Francisco Foundation, EBHO. And Ms. Simmons talking about LIST, Local Initiative Support Corporation, what LIST stands for. And she could not say enough to challenge you all, but I want to just top this with LIST. 20 years ago, when we bought the shopping center at Acorn, $6.2 million investment project, federal and state and local government, it was LIST at the table 20 years ago at Westside Baptist Church to build us up like Moses when he was at war, and Caleb and Joshua, in order for us to buy into a shopping center in 1999. Hello, somebody, anybody old enough to remember that? So everybody has said on this panel, I want those radio opportunity people that's out there to know it's all about us. It's not about me, myself, and I. It's about the work that we're doing collectively in concert together. And EBHO, you bring it all down together, Gloria and your team. So, I'm preaching to the choir, but I just got a happy moment just thinking about what you all have contributed to the Bay Area. It's just awesome. Had to say that. I know that's off script. Had to say it. Sorry. Y'all don't have to invite me back, but I had to say it.
Am I audible? Okay, so I am not the pastor of the First Congregational Church of Berkeley, which burned, That is Reverend Molly Basquiat. I am a layperson very much involved in the struggle to overcome homelessness, and very proud to be on this Affordable Housing Committee, which is visioning the whole thing into the future. And we're going to be working with a development consultant. And Billie's words are very germane to what we're going to be doing. And we have voted as a congregation. Now, the important thing that my contribution would be is to say your process with your people is so important. How the people of the church come together around the idea of giving up some of the things that they've had before and starting a whole new way of being. How do you take some of your property and just, especially if it's a parking lot and you won't have that much parking anymore, how are you going to deal with that? So we had a couple of years of congregational process. And I want to just say that that's so important to many other churches probably in even thinking to take on this kind of a decision. And we use a process called the Healthy Congregations Workshop that our leadership cycles through in order to bring about healthy communication skills in dealing with people's feelings and people's resistances and people's dreams and hopes and their grief. I mean, and especially thinking about what you have to give up when you've already had to give up the building that was burned. So there's a lot of work to be done as a congregation if you're starting off the process of trying to work towards building affordable housing. But building affordable housing is a thing that faith-based groups are now doing. It's kind of like a trend that we could be joining, and other churches could be encouraged to join this movement and give up some of their property so that they can build housing. And it's something that working on it just ensures that your faith grows. Your faith grows as you work through this process. Now, in our church, we have some wonderful people who are extremely expert on this whole housing dilemma or the development project dilemma. And so we are very blessed in our leadership within the congregation. So it's not just the, pastoral leadership of the church that is driving this whole process. It's these wonderful congregational groups that are struggling to refinance, rebuild, and then develop on our property. But we have committed to do it. It can be done. We hope to start building the affordable housing about a year after our whole church rebuilding has occurred. So it's all in the future. But this is this time of pandemic is a time when the imagination has to be a very strong carrier of faith, that we imagine a better future. We imagine a better world. We imagine being a church in the reality that is emerging. However needy that reality is, we want to be there in the middle of it.
Thank you for that insight, Alice. That's awesome. All right, so ready for the next question? What were the challenges in building on your property, and what were the benefits or blessings? So the question is, what were the challenges in building affordable housing, and what were the benefits or blessings? We can popcorn it again. So brave one goes first.
Who's on first, what's on second, I don't know. They're trying to make homes, all right? So listen, that was Abbott and Costello, by the way. let me just say, we have a lot of property over 80 years we've bought. And I'm going to give you some real tough topic. No congregation want to lose their shirt in the middle of a deal to reach the hands of a developer. And we all have to watch out for it, because there's some, there's some people that don't have the best interests of that congregation or community, but it's all about making money. You have to watch out for that. And LIST, as Ms. Simmons has said, it gives you tools to protect against that. As Pastor Field talked, there's ways to partner with folks that have the same spirit. Now, our property, we're looking at a couple options. One is we've done the tiny home development. We have a warehouse now that we're trying to do at temporary wraparound services. So we will do emergency shelter 24, and we're talking about emergency 24-hour shelter as we yet develop that property, yet doing the Safe Car Park program, all on the interim while we're doing the long-term plan. And we're able to build 60 units on our property because we're one block from BART. We have variances that we can get to condense the parking that's required because we one block from BART. So those things like that. Plus, there's a lot of development happening at the West Oakland BART station. If you notice, West Oakland's become a diamond in the rough. A very, very largest encampments of homelessness there. So you can build all that. But now here's another thing too, and I'm a little bit off track. As we plan to go forward with the bill and find that right development, I'm looking at a for-profit developer partnership as well as nonprofit developer partnership. For-profit, we can build it without any government resources and all that, so and therefore get it done real fast or cheaper cost, and then set aside so many units for Section 8. So therefore, you yet have the building, you yet have the profits to pay for it, those that can't pay market rate, then you also have a section that you have for Section 8. So that's one model we're looking at. Quite naturally, we're looking at the other model going through entitlements and so on and that's forth, which takes a little longer. You're paying scale wages, and that's fine, but we need to pay livable wages. But we have to balance both of those out, because at the end of the day, we want to create housing. And this is the last little point I want to real quick. All the high rises built downtown Oakland and many of the cities, they have a high vacancy rate. That's housing's units that's up right now sitting vacant that they want so many $1,000s per month. These property owners and big time developers in the cities need to, whether it's through a federal, state, or local subsidy, or just out of the goodness of their heart, set aside some of those high-end units for affordability. And they need to do it immediately. And we can immediately get people up off the streets. And I understand they don't want to put somebody in there that's going to tear up their new, nice high-rise development. So screen them properly, put the wraparound services around it. And that can be done quicker than what the Westside Baptist Church can build affordable house. It's going to take me 4 or 5 years to build a house. But you got these skyrocket razors, tall $1 million buildings that's half vacant because they want $5,000 for a 2-bedroom. That can be overnight. We can put people off the streets and in those units right now as we continue to build faith-based programs. And that's a program the Interfaith Council of Alameda County is launching. And I am serious, because I just came from Arizona. It's a whole different beast and community in Arizona. I mean, and affordability, beautiful greenery, all those things, environmentally safe stuff. And we come here to the Bay Area, it's highway robbery. And so that has and excuse me for my passion on that. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
No, I understand your passion. It's true. It's frustrating because a lot of times, here you are with a property that is paid for. In our instance, it's a block of property that's available. So you think, okay, I want to house the homeless. I have agreed to do it. You let the city know. What is the issue with the funding? What is the issue with the permits? What is the issue? You keep running into red tape and roadblocks. It is 13 years for me. Each year, the NOFAs, the goalpost gets pushed back. right? So I am a woman of faith. Everyone is not. So everyone cannot afford to keep waiting. They have bills to pay. Even though our congregation, the faces have changed, right? You know, everyone can afford to wait year after year after year, right? So it's not that they don't have a heart to house the unhoused, but they have things to take care of. So that is one of the challenges I see, you know. It gets frustrating when you're city officials and your city is not working with you to get this accomplished. I think when we talk about these bills, the Senate bills, like the AB that just in terms of the parking lot, those kind of things, you know, what happens on the Senate floors, you know, with these things. So those kind of challenges. So those are kind of frustrating. So I see those things, yeah.
I'd like to piggyback on that because this is probably, you know, terribly obvious to all of you, but as I was getting more and more into this project, I was realizing that every stick of housing, every park, every street, it takes a significant amount of effort, attention, and money to make it come to life, right? And all the housing that's not built is there for a reason or a lot of reasons. And so I think this is just starting to shift, particularly in the East Bay, but the restrictions we've had for a very, very long time around the kinds of housing that's built and the amount of time it takes to get through the permitting process and the cost it takes to get through the permitting process is outrageous. And so I think the shift is starting, but for us, you know, the project we did, we worked with the neighborhood, we did our open houses, we talked to our neighbors, we got our feedback on the design. Some of the feedback was incredibly helpful and it helped us build a better building. Some of our neighbors, and it was a minority of neighbors, but they were very vocal and they were very adept at getting together and forming what they felt like was a strong enough group. You know, they threatened the process all throughout, right? And I think from the beginning, we did our best to be open to all kinds of different opinions, thoughts, hopes. And so, as I said, I think we were able to bring a lot of it in, but some folks, it was just really clear. It was not in my backyard. And some folks were pretty bald-faced about it, not wanting those people to live in the neighborhood that we deserve. And so at a certain point, I think that, you know, we kind of learned over the couple of years who was really interested in working with us and who was just dead set working against us. And to those folks, you know, I still keep them in my praying, honestly, because also I didn't want my heart to be infected with the same pain that they were putting out. But at a certain point, we just had to keep going. And I was really grateful. Our city council members, we happen to be in one city council district, and the other side of the street is a different city council district, and the other side of the other street is a third council district. So we had 3 city council members that we had to work with from the very beginning. And at first I was thinking, oh, this is the worst situation ever. But then I came to realize once they were on board, that we already had a group to work with. And so city council members, Kate Harrison, Sophie Hahn, and Susan Wengraf were supportive. And Mayor Jesse Argine from the start was in our corner. And not just in terms of money, which was a big deal, but also in terms of process. And so, you know, all the little quirks of Berkeley came out. Like, you know, we had oaks that were too big, and there's a moratorium in the city of Berkeley. If an oak is bigger than this big around, not only can you can't cut it down, and you can't replace that. You can't plant another oak. The only places in the city of Berkeley, and this is in the city charter, you can cut them down in the Berkeley Rose Garden to protect the view of the Golden Gate, and you can cut them down near one of the fire stations they were trying to build. And so things like that you'd never expect. And Mayor Argine led a an effort to write into the laws of the city of Berkeley that any affordable housing project would be exempt from that moratorium. Right, so like little things like that we thought, well, this is never going to happen. And let's talk money. This is a $25.5 million project, which is kind of insane. But because of the city of Berkeley, the A1 money that got passed from the county Alameda, the state of California, the No Place Like Home funds, and then the federal low-income tax credit program, that's how it's going to be able to happen. And it takes all of those folks working together and calling on the might of the affordable housing industrial complex to make a go of it. But one more thing I will say, which is I do think that the tide is finally coming in our direction. SB 35, which you all may remember passed a couple years ago. Without SB 35, there's no way that we'd be looking like this right now. So some of our neighbors tried to falsely claim that the air, traffic, water, and light would be negatively affected, even though all the studies we had done showed that that was not going to be the case, and they threatened legal action. And we were able to invoke SB 35, and which basically says that as long as your project adheres to the local city guidelines and codes and the state laws, you can build if it's affordable housing. Which, why we needed a law to say that says a lot about the current state we're in. However, I'm grateful that it's there and we were able to use it, move through that, and get building.
Thank you. Alice, did you have anything to add?
We also worked as a congregation on getting proposition that is Measure W to pass. And this was very important for raising money to end homelessness through a sales tax. But it's very helpful to, as we go looking forward to some of the things that Phil was describing that we may have to encounter, to know that there is this Alameda County fund that will help us. But there are many things ahead that may fall into the same description as what some of you have said that we haven't yet encountered. But we do think that we've got the right kinds of people in place to deal with them. And so I can't give you all the problems that we're going to have, but we have had, this congregational process, and I would suggest that that has been a gift to us to have some struggles and some communication issues and congregational process work done that has kind of opened us up to each other, and we've become a more bonded congregation in this process of trying to recover from our disaster and move towards our vision. So I recommend congregational struggles to not be afraid of, and look for the kind of help that we can get from such a thing as the Healthy Congregations Workshop.
Community opposition.
What's that?
Believe it or not, we had community opposition just housing homeless overnight in a safe car park program with security, with monitors. The local community associations, group of residents, barked against it. And, it's just, the people don't want stuff like that in their own yard, and people don't want affordable housing in their own yard. And one thing, former Councilmember Larry Reed in Oakland fought so that he had the East Oakland biggest district with the most affordable housing growing in his district, and said that, well, other parts of the city of Oakland should share in carrying the burden of affordable housing, not just put it all in one. And if you remember, HUD broke up all of the HUD housing nationally, where they were putting a whole bunch of poor people in units stacked up together, which they broke it down where there's mixed incomes together. People see people going to work, it inspires others, people with families and so on. And that's community. And that's what we should welcome. And so all these challenges is just like iron sharpening. It makes us sharper as a faith-based institution. And we know we walk by faith, not by sight. I don't see us building 60 units on Westside property in the next 5 to 7 years. But I got to believe and trust and do all the work I can to make that dream come true. And so, and that's called organizing that community around us in order to help and working with many people of you that's been there and done that, and not to recreate the wheel, but learn from others. So it's a process. And thank you all for underscoring those things.
Yes, thank you all for your answers. You're just giving us a lot to think about. Next, we talked a little bit about this, or it was mentioned in a few of your answers. But I'm going to pose it here. What advice do you have for other faith communities looking to build affordable housing? I'll repeat it again. What advice do you have for other faith communities looking to build affordable housing?
I think I'll start. You guys already know my pitch, but I'll start. The Bible says, count up the cost, right? So not only financially, sometimes Reverend Phil just threw out $25 million as a cost. And churches, we know it is not coming across the offering table, right? So when we talk about a joint venture partner, so mine is Related of California, because my project is a 66 unit senior affordable housing for seniors, some formerly homeless seniors, and then singles, studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. That's multi-million-dollar project. That is not coming across the offering table. So of course that is not in my bank account, but what is my joint venture project partner bringing to the table? It's bringing expertise, but it's also bringing dollars to the table, right? But what am I bringing to the table, and what are you bringing to the table? Land, right? Very valuable, right? That is the partnership. So I will tell you to count up the cost, but you ought to need to know, is it feasible for you to do this project? And so again, that is understanding, what is this project? What is the vision? Who do you want to house? You know, I'm housing, my project has changed. First, it was maybe a multifamily project, and then it shifted to a senior housing project, right? So again, I'm going to put that out again. LISC Bay Area, Alameda County Housing Development Capacity Building Program. Applications are due June 1st. And I know it sounds facetious, but again, they're going to give you the tools to answer those kind of questions. You may think about doing affordable housing on your land, but it may not even be feasible for you to do it. So before you go out and put a lot of money into plans and all those kind of things, you need to know if it's even feasible for you to do it. So here are you going to get the tools to do that. So again, I'm putting it out there, bayarealist.org, and it will have a link to the Alameda County Housing Development Capacity Building Program in order for you to apply to get the tools to know if it's feasible for you to even do affordable housing on your site, to attend those workshops to get those tools to know the next steps in terms of doing affordable housing on your site. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I can jump in here. One of the things that we've tried to keep in mind as we've done the work over these years, and I'll put it here in the chat if I can. We try to keep 5 constituencies in mind as we were doing the work. So one was our leadership body, the board of our congregation. From a fiduciary responsibility perspective, they had to sign on board, right? They're the ones that the buck stops with them. And so they needed to be ready for this. We also, at the same time, needed to be talking to our congregation as a whole and making sure that we had consensus, not unanimity, right? I admire the Quaker traditions that work with unanimity. I just don't think that would happen in the Episcopal Church. So we work with consensus. And so the congregations that I've served, it's how do you communicate, listen. And so we've had a number of forums. We try to write about it in our newsletter, all these different ways that we can have the congregation understand what's happening and work with that. The third was our neighborhood. I talked about that. It was, lots of forums and things like that, conversations, one-on-ones. Members of our project team, I haven't talked nearly enough about the project team from the beginning. We've had a group of parishioners who had a different kinds of skill sets. Some who were journalists or who worked with finances, architects, all kinds of folks who wanted to see this happen. And so several of these folks had one-on-ones with people in our neighborhood. And sometimes those one-on-ones ended up with those people who were on the fence becoming supporters. Sometimes it was people who were against it, who decided, I'll sit this one out, I'll be neutral. And sometimes those one-on-ones, those people were still not going to support our project, but at least they knew where we stood and they were not going to act on misinformation. Or at least we were going to give them the information, so hopefully they didn't act on misinformation. The fourth is the city. So we're always trying to be in conversation with our city council members, the mayor, and members of the planning staff, just to make sure that we could do as right by them as we could. And last, our judicatory. In our branch of the Christian tradition, our diocese or our bishop actually holds the rights to our land and our property. So we can't act on our own behalf. And so the whole way through, we had to keep our bishop and his staff apprised of what we were doing so they could sign on the bottom line as well. And so that's one of the things that we were just keeping those 5 constituencies in mind at every step and trying to keep them informed as we were going along. We found to be really, really important. And the times when we forgot to do one is usually when something got tripped up.
Thank you.
Can I jump in again real quick?
Mhm.
I worked as a consultant for the North Oakland Baptist Church 20 years ago when they built 65 units of affordable housing, Reverend Sylvester Rutledge. So again, the church came together, brought their additional property that the church owned back behind their church. They have a congregation with a lot of seniors, so the self-interest was senior housing. We negotiated a deal with them to partner with, at that time, OCHI, Oakland Community House, Inc., which later went out of business due to a California hotel lawsuit on bed bugs, just to show you how difficult this work can be. But OCHI got them engaged, and now Christian Church Homes, I believe, is stepped in when OCHI fell out of that deal. We negotiated a deal for the North Oakland Baptist Church where they would not lose their shirt. The church was never at risk. The church building never at risk. The own property stood on its own. They did 65 units with OCHI, then later Christian Church Homes. Now, after this, I hate to say this, I'm not this old really, but here now 25 years later, they had to refinance their property. And Reverend Rutledge and I sat back and reminisced over how hard that was to get that project going. That was in a different time zone. That was when we had California redevelopment dollars, and Jerry Brown came in and brought 10,000 residents downtown, then get rid of the state redevelopment dollars. So we have 20 years of no state designated monies for building affordable housing that has caused us to get somewhat in this turmoil of housing. But at the same time, now we're trying to backpedal and play catch up. And let me just say, it's hard to catch up when you can't keep up. So we didn't keep up with the need of affordable housing over the last 20 years. So now we're playing catch up, which seems so unfair, but at the courageous faith leaders and congregations that are still grabbing hold to the tool of knowledge and diversity and collaboration and ingenuity to make it happen in spite of all those challenges. And then, can I just add in my closing, then community opposition at my backyard on top of that, it seems unfair. The work is so hard to build affordable housing that you would think all hands on deck, everybody would be doing what they can to make it happen. But you got the naysayers, you got the not in my backyards, you got the political other ambitions of other politicians, big pet project. You got all that to deal with. And but God as our guide, we will prevail. And so stay with it. I know I am, and I'm coming up 30 years of pastoring, and and sometimes say, wow, it's the needs never stop. The needs never stop. So again, congratulations to all those that's doing affordable housing or being part of helping affordable housing happen.
All right, thank you, Reverend Ken. If there isn't any more to say, we can move on to the next question. All right. So I'm going to combine the last two questions here because they're intertwined and we've talked about it quite a bit already. What are some things to watch out or be careful of? And what are some keys to success? So I think those would kind of go together. Yeah, so what are some things to watch out and be careful of? And what are some keys to success?
I think in our case, it was the thing to watch out for that we overcame was putting the cart before the horse.
Mm.
It was a great deal of desire to do something about affordable housing in order to help us to deal with our church finance problem of rebuilding our church before we had done anything about what was going to go on to rebuild the church. There hadn't been any design. There hadn't been any fiscal, calculation about where were we at? We didn't even have the insurance money yet. So talking about building affordable housing on our campus was too scary and it was too early. So we put it off for a couple of years. And this congregational process learning that I'm talking about was part of that. So just really doubling down on what is going to be your project and how can you center yourself in that project. We decided we couldn't center ourselves in that project until we had figured out how to rebuild the broken building. And then once we had done that, we came to this congregational vote because it was going to fulfill our mission and support our church. Now, I haven't talked about that at all, but the plan will be for us to either lease or sell the piece of property to the developer. So we're going to need every aid that we can get in getting the right developer and the right project and the right mix of housing that we're going to put up there. And I appreciate the suggestions that have been made about what you can have as your project about who to house. I think mixed development is something that we're strongly looking at. But the idea is that we will recoup from having given away in one form or other, sale or lease, a piece of property that will be of great value to us and to the people who will eventually live there. So just not rushing. We can't rush. We just can't rush, even though the need is upon us so heavily. So in our congregation, we've sublimated that desire by doing a great deal of homeless outreach and working with agencies that serve the homeless, like Berkeley Food and Housing, Youth Spirit Artworks, and others.
Thank you, Alice.
I think a couple of things come to mind for me. One is and I think they're related for me, the keys to success and what to watch out for. I think one of the keys to success is the relationships that you build to take this on. I think we've all talked about the relationships with the developers and other folks, because you work on this so intensely with this group of people, that you have to take the time to build that trust, because you're going to come up against things where you have a difference of opinion, something goes south, and you have to figure a way to go forward together. And so if it's not an organization and a group of people that share your common values for mission, then that's going to be much, much harder. And so do your work beforehand, find out who they are, how long they've been around, talk to the people who've worked with them, do your work, because you're going to be working with this group of people for a very long time. I think for us too, something that we didn't initially realize as the process was unfolding was that the architectural firm that you work with also needs to share your vision. And it took a little while for the architectural firm that we worked with to share our vision. They do now, and I'm grateful for that. But there was some heartache in there that was probably unnecessary. And so make sure that the people you're working with, that you have a clear enough sense, that's on you, right? To have a clear enough sense of what does this building need to do? How does it need to look? How does it need to function so it functions well with our church and within our neighborhood? For us, that neighborhood piece was really important. This is the first affordable housing built in this basically third of Berkeley in 30 years. And a lot of that is because there's a lot of neighborhoods who said, I don't think so. I don't think that fits. And so one of the things from an architectural standpoint we had to do was to say, let's make sure this fits. And it does. We really do believe that. But you want to make sure, as close to the stars as you can, that you have a clarity about your own vision that you can share with that other development partner, architectural partner, so that they share that as well. And so that I think that would have led to probably an easier road for us. I probably would have slept a lot better, but there it is. But the scriptures do talk about that, don't they? So I'd say those are some of the keys. This probably could go without saying, but I don't want it to go without saying in a group like this. You really do need to put your trust in God. Because the people that you're working with, the city council, the developer, all those folks, they're on your side. Hopefully they're going to work with you, be on your side. But there's no way we can do this on our own. Especially when you get to those places where it just seems like there's no other way forward. And we came to that on more than a few occasions. And I do believe we were carried through. I have no other explanation for it. When the city of Berkeley can let you cut down an oak tree, you know that God has intervened. So I do think that is, for me and for us, I think that's been a necessary component and a key to us being where we are today.
I just have to say amen to that. That's so true. Or ditto. I would just add on top of that, just remembering your purpose and your mission to why you started this journey, because it can get lost. As I stated, I'm 13 years in, and that may sound a lot to someone out there, but you have to remember I started in 2008, and as Pastor Chambers had mentioned, the redevelopment agency was done away with, right? Within that year, right? So a lot of changes happened with the housing, right when my project started. And so you have to be, know that those kind of things, that was a big shift in the housing development world, right? So if your project was not in the pipe, so to say, in that pipeline during that time, then you weren't going to get those dollars. And then there are a lot of political things that happen. And if you're not aware of those kind of things, if you're not in the loop per se, that district or that district. And I have to say, my council member, I'm in District 5, and Councilman Gallo is behind us 100%. He is our champion. And, you know, and that is a wonderful thing. But I have changed council members over the year in the course of those 13 years. And some prior to that were not my champions per se. So you have to look to that, you know, so those things happen. But again, as Reverend Phil has said, with God on our side, we are people of faith. We keep and we persevere because he is ultimately on the throne and this is his mission, right? We are just stewards. Ultimately, he has placed this land and made us in trust, and he makes us good stewards, hopefully. It was my father-in-law who founded the church. My mother-in-law opened a school there, preschool to 12th grade. When I came to the church, I was 19 years old, had no idea I was going to marry into this business. No idea that I was going to be entrusted with the property. I started the process, I may not finish it. So many times in the Bible, that's how things happen, right? You know, one planted, one watereth, the other, and so on and so on. But we want to do what we've been called to do. And so along the way, you want to remember the reason you've started the mission so you don't lose sight. And so many times, that is the trick of, we call it the enemy, or whoever you call it. He wants us to get off focus, right? And there's so many things to get us off focus in this world, but we want to stay on point and our mission and what our heart's call has been, right? Whether that is to feed the homeless, house the homeless, love on the homeless, love on our families, and love on whoever. Our call, my call right now, and my energy right now, and why I've been on this march for 13 years is to try to see this forward, and to whoever's hand I have to pass it on to make sure that I have it in order. And I've laid the foundation and opened up the way for them to do the next steps. If I'm called home tomorrow, they're able to go on with it, right? So that is the thing I would say, not to lose the purpose, right? And not to lose the heart, because it may not happen overnight, right? And you have to be ready to understand that with affordable housing, right?
I forgot to mention one thing that I was really helpful for us. You know, those who are not against us can be for us. And I'll never forget one of our forums when, you know, it was in our church hall and we were presenting the possibilities of this project, the massing studies. And we had, you know, some neighbors, you know, really fired up in all kinds of different directions. And then this young man who I'd never seen before came up to the microphone and said, I like everything about this project except one thing. I want it to have more units. I want this to actually have more of a footprint here. And I thought, who is that young man? And he was a member of YIMBY. And YIMBY showed up YIMBY decided that, the people in the neighborhood who are going to be NIMBYs should not have the only word in the conversation or even the loudest word. And so there are communities of support out there that, that the church may not be the first place they go to, but they are ready and willing to back up these ways of being and housing folks in our communities and are ready to show up with us.
This is so educational for me. I'm taking notes all day long. Thank you, both of you guys, all the speakers. Let me just say that in this journey on housing, it affects all of us. I mean, you may say not in my backyard and so on, that's for it, but let me say what the homeless problem has done to our cities because of COVID infestation into our global economy. Because of homeless camps couldn't be cleaned out. There's been a growing rodent and rat problem that don't stay in the homeless camp. Those, because we've been seeing some big large rats. I say, wow, what is those rats eating? And they're roaming our cities. Rodents, trash, garbage. So when you don't deal with this problem of homelessness and housing, it affects everybody in every community. And then people dropping off stuff into the homeless encampments that they don't want. I mean, all that kind of illegal dumping. I mean, and it messes up the beauty of our city. It contaminates our environment, our waterways, our sewer systems. So, and eventually all that stuff come right back around to the one that says not in my backyard, because you got to turn on your faucet and drink that water that you're going to cook your meal with, boil your water till it turns blue or whatever, because stuff is in the sewer system because of the overlooking of the environmental problem of homelessness. And that is an environmental problem. It's an environmental issue for waste to be running down in our sewer and going into our waterways. But then here's a neighbor say, not in my backyard. Well, but you're drinking the waste from a encampment that's run off. And by the way, the encampments are growing. So if we don't deal with this head on as a community, as a collective, as all have spoken of, it eventually will plague us one way or another, and we'll look back way in our next generation. It's all about the next generation. I think I see everybody on this thing have gray hair, but Miss Simmons and Ronnie Boyd, you are the two young kids, but the rest of us we're not the same. And we need to have a generational movement of young millennials coming to take this fight on from our congregation. Well, as you know, the congregation, I'm not bragging on our both, but when I was a young pastor and I said, old folk, man, them people frowned up at me. I thought they was gonna start throwing their purses and hats. Now I done got old, I can say that because most of our congregations are older folk, and we have to pull in that millennial to take this vision and mission, because this is a long-term, this is not a sprint, this is a long-term stretch, this affordable housing. And it needs to go on. We need to plant the seeds now that for generations to yet to come, that we don't have this problem 20 years from now, talking about people are living in the streets. That's unnecessary for the richest country in the world, right, having this many people living on the streets. All right, thank you. I wish I could stay on point, but I can't.
Wow, this was exciting. Thank you so much, Reverend Chambers, Phil, Billie, and Alice. We've come to the point in our night where we're taking questions from the audience. So if you have a question, please raise your hand or put it in the chat. And if you're watching us on Facebook, you can also write a question in the comments. So let's see. I think we had one earlier from Gloria. But we need to find it. Let's see.
Yeah, Gloria's question was about any of the communities represented here who had experienced opposition from your neighborhood and how you dealt with it. So I know we talked about that a little bit. I don't know if there's anything else anyone wants to add. But is there something someone wants to add?
I'll just say you got to engage your community. Bring them together, let them be part of the vision of your congregation. Hopefully that they can help bring added value. And you're going to always have some naysayers that you just got to, shake your head and let them, scream all day. But when you know you're working on a right, correct, spiritual driven mission, God will send the folks that you need. And I think Reverend Phil said it so well. He'll send the folks you need that you least expect, that may not be sitting in your congregation or on your Zoom service, but will support your mission. And that's the people that you got to reach out and organize. You got to have more saying amen than less. But then, we know Gideon can take 300 and move mountains of 10,000. So with God, all things are possible. But we have to be, God is intelligent, and he also has a sense of humor and gives directions. And we have to stay humble and push through and try to connect with people.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question that they want to ask? I know we've covered a lot of ground already this evening.
No news is good news.
Yeah, we've got to. I think you talked them all into quiet.
Yes.
But thank you for all the information that you offered. Grover, do we have any questions from Facebook or?
We do not have any questions on Facebook, but I do just want to say thank you, everyone. I really learned a lot from this.
Yes, I want to thank all of our panelists for being with us tonight. And as we wrap up, and I think we can probably wrap up a little bit early, I want to just give us a bit of a call to action and some next steps as we think about taking this work forward beyond this discussion this evening, beyond this panel. And just mention to everyone that EBHO has been working together with a number of statewide organizations as well as regional organizations to move forward a piece of legislation in the state assembly that would allow faith institutions, churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, to put affordable housing on their property by right, which means they wouldn't have to go through zoning changes, which are time consuming and costly. That bill has been in the legislature for 2 years. It didn't move last year, and unfortunately it did not move again this year. So in terms of housing and working for housing justice being a long journey, as we've heard in many ways, this is another long journey. We are not giving up, but the coalition of organizations that has been working together around this issue has decided that for now, we're going to try to go around our legislative leaders, and instead of simply working at the state level, we want also to work at the local level and to work to pass ordinances in local cities and counties that allow for by right development. So in coming months, we're going to be looking at the possibility of putting together a model ordinance, maybe for the city of Oakland, or for the city of Berkeley, or for another locality in the East Bay. Maybe it makes sense to try to do something at the county level. But we feel like if we can get a couple of good model ordinances at the local level, then we might be able to go back to our state legislative leaders and say, see, here are some local examples and they're working. Why don't we try to broaden this through the state? We know that there's a group in Southern California that's doing this as well in Pasadena. So we want to try to have a Northern California complement to that work. So if any of you here with us tonight are interested in joining together and help thinking about that work, are working with us to pass some local ordinances that'll help make it easier for faith communities to build affordable housing, please be in touch with us at EBHO. You can reach out to me, you can reach out to Ronnie, you can reach out to the staff at Bay Area LISC who've also been involved in the beginnings of this effort. We'd love to have your help and your support. And if you are with a faith community that is beginning to think about, dream about, and explore this possibility of affordable housing, you can reach out to us or any of the congregations represented here tonight for more information on how to begin a development journey. So, and Grover has put the links to our partner organizations in the chat. Thank you so much, Grover. So we really want to thank you for joining us here tonight and engaging in this conversation.
Sophie?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Denise in San Francisco. I was wondering if it'd be possible for someone to send us an email of that contact information, because I don't know how to take a picture of it or how to get that information from the chat before it closes down. Would that be possible for us someone to send it to us on an email response?
Can I answer that, Sophia?
Yes, absolutely.
If you RSVP'd for this Zoom link, which I'm assuming if you're in here, you did.
I did.
Great. Then I'll send a follow-up email probably middle of next week with a link to this video and a link to everything I just put in the chat right here.
Great. Yeah, because I'm living in the middle of it here. I mean, I can barely get down the street with a wheelchair. It's so thick of, unhoused people in my neighborhood. It's terrible suffering out here. And so I would love to, I'm connected to several faith-based church communities, and I would love to, some of which has some resources and are interested in this. So I would love to see it happen.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm at a hospital cafeteria. I'm glad they have internet here. You see. Thank you.
Ronnie, would you like to close us out?
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, sure. Of course, Reverend Ken.
When is, EBHO has been engaged with the Interfaith Council of Alameda County. We thank Ronnie's participation. We and I understand the state bill that we're working on hasn't went through. So we're looking at the local organizing efforts. And I just you may have said this, or I should know this already, but EBHO doesn't it have meetings to formulate these strategies where we can participate? And I should know this, and probably asking that dumb question, but they say the dumb question is the question not asked. So how can people chime into EBHO in order to be effective with the organizing efforts that EBHO has going on? Can you just reiterate that again? I may have missed it.
That's a great question, Ken, and I swear you are not a plant. Ronnie, would you like to talk about our faith and justice work?
Yes, so we have a faith and justice committee where we talk about various campaigns we're involved in, actions we're doing, mobilizations for faith-based work for both Alameda County and Contra Costa County. We meet once a month, every fourth Thursday at 9:30 a.m. And we have a good group right now. We're spending a lot of our time trying to strategize how to be good allies to curbside communities as we're working on the city budget, which just came out last week, if not the week before, if I'm not mistaken. Trying to be an advocate for funds going into homelessness services. So we're doing a plethora of things, but folks can join that committee if they're interested in being involved in EBHO's faith-based organizing work.
And we have a meeting next week.
Yeah.
So next Thursday morning at 9:30. That's the 27th. Please join us if you're interested. Be in touch with Ronnie. She can send you the Zoom link information. And
please send me that link, please.
And yes, thank you, Ronnie, for also mentioning the Oakland City budget. It is budget season in the city of Oakland, as it is in other cities in the East Bay. Related to the Oakland budget, we are advocating at EBHO for $40 billion in affordable housing funding in the current budget, 2-year budget cycle, which will be able to, if it were passed, to help projects that are shovel ready, i.e. ready for construction, to put up hundreds of more units of needed affordable housing in our community.
Great, and I just want to reiterate, all of the high risers in Oakland that's been built, the vacancy rate is very high. One of the issues that Interfaith Council is going to be working on is organizing. We already made a pledge to the Oakland Chamber of Commerce that some of those landlords should have it in their heart to set aside some of those units for affordability. They're just sitting there vacant and they're waiting for that $5,000 for a 2-bedroom person to come sign a lease. Well, let's put somebody in there and let them pay affordability and help people. And so that's something that we see can happen right away with some willing high-rise owners in Oakland. So sounds like far-fetched, but it's things like that that's could be part of the homeless solutions.
Thank you, Reverend Chambers, for that. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to bid you all good night. Thank you so much to our panelists, and also a shout out to our sponsors. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. And please check out the email that Grover is going to send around next week for some resources. Bye-bye now.